What is up, everybody? Welcome to Habs After Dark. My name's Devin, of course. You know that already. Welcome to the show. Montreal Canadiens, they fall 3-2 to the Anaheim Ducks in what I will describe as their worst performance since before Christmas. This was a terrible performance in my view. This was the worst they've played. This was the most pathetic performance they've put on the ice since before Christmas. I'm not sure what's going on with the team right now, but tonight was not a step in the right direction. Tonight was a significant step backwards. Even with the recent losses, I haven't really felt that way. I felt that they've played at least to a decent level in their last few games, despite losing. However, tonight was a huge step backwards, in my opinion. Huge step backwards, in my opinion. I don't have the right words for it, to be honest with you. This is a return back to the team from October and November, the way they played tonight. The Anaheim Ducks are not a good hockey team. Tonight, they were not a good hockey team. They were missing their best player. The opportunity to take advantage of the Anaheim Ducks tonight was like on a silver platter for the Montreal Canadiens, and they completely shit the bed. They played 20 minutes of good hockey, figured that they would have a cakewalk on their hands, and they went completely to sleep, looking for the easy way out, and they put a pathetic performance on the ice for the second and third period and looked like absolute pure trash. They were worst I've seen them in over 2 months. It was a terrible, terrible performance, and if that's the team that we have in Montreal right now, the rebuild is not on the right track. And there may be some questions about some of those players on that team and whether or not they're the right fit for this organization going forward if this team is going to go and rebuild into being a playoff contender and eventually a Stanley Cup contender. There may be players on that team whose work ethic and ability to put a performance on the ice is in question, in my opinion. That was not a good performance. Now, I'm not going to base, I'm not losing my mind because it's only one game, but at the same time, that to me had every bit of what they could have been. And they just didn't. Like the opportunity, it was such an easy opportunity for them, and they couldn't even take advantage of it. I honestly don't really know what to say about it. Like it's just like that was as easy a layup as you could get in the NHL. And again, I'm not upset at them losing. I'm never upset at them losing. They're going to lose games. But to lose a game in that manner is about as pathetic a manner to lose a game in the NHL as you can possibly get. You've got one of the worst teams in the NHL. And when I say worst teams in the NHL, I mean, Anaheim obviously is rebuilding and they're working towards something. But at the same time, they are right now one of the, the least productive teams in the NHL. They're one of the easiest teams in the NHL to beat. They find out that their best player isn't playing, shortly before the game starts. And they're just not ready to play. And the Montreal Canadiens just completely, fall apart in front of them. Like they fall down on the ground and just do absolutely nothing. Like there's not one player on that team who had a good game tonight. There's not one player on the entire team who could say that they are, happy about their performance and the way that they played. Not one of them. And to me, it's horrible. It's horrible. Again, you will rarely ever hear me speak this way about this team. I'm an eternal optimist. I'm a huge believer in the rebuild, and that even when they play badly, there's lessons to be learned, and there's things going forward, and there's ways to get better. All of these things, but tonight's performance is an absolute step in the wrong direction, and for the first time, I'm questioning whether or not some of these players are the right players for this team going forward. if the idea is that this team is going to move forward and become a contending team, do they have the right guys for that job? And tonight makes me wonder if that's the case. Let me just see what's going on here. UIOUT. Become a contending team. Yeah, okay, so that is working. Okay. So anyways, let's get into the game, guys. If you're new here, please subscribe. The subscribe button is just down below the screen here below me. Hit the notification bell. Give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying the content. We are trying to grow a community here. Recliner Sports. I see James is here. Frank is here. RDP is here. According to my computer, there are 10 others of you here. I'm sure that the turnout is going to be low tonight. The turnout is typically low when the Canadiens play badly. And on a Sunday early game, the turnout's going to be low. But if you are here, then I invite you to please come on over. If you're over on TikTok, come on and join us on YouTube. The instructions are on the screen on TikTok behind me. We're on YouTube at Recliner Sports 4. Come join the show if you have questions. Kyle, I see you over there asking questions. If you want to ask questions, come on over here to YouTube and ask over here. The only reason I have the TikTok turned on is just so you guys will know that we're doing a show and to invite you over to join us on YouTube. If you're watching in a replay, I appreciate you as well. Give us a follow, subscribe, hit the subscribe button below, and feel free to pose your questions in the comment box as well. So I think there are some guys who played well, Armia and Evans, but besides that, not many. I don't disagree with you about Armia. Evans played a decent game too, relatively speaking to the other guys, but he was, he made a bad read on that first goal. Again, guys are going to make bad reads. I don't expect guys to be perfect, and, sometimes guys are going to make bad reads, but I don't know that I would say that he had a good game based on that. Frank says, hello, Devin. I think the team got away from playing their system. They are way off track. Yeah, their defensive zone system has not looked good. It looked good in the first period, right? They were creating turnovers. They were killing plays in the defensive zone and in the neutral zone, and it was resulting in offense going the other way. But again, they were very passive in the offensive zone. They weren't taking advantage of their opportunities. They weren't bearing down, and as a result, they had a 2-0 lead. Going into that second period, but as soon as, a 2-0 lead is, what do they say? A 2-0 lead is the worst lead in hockey because, all it takes is that one goal from the other team to turn the momentum in the other direction. And that's exactly what happened. They thought they were in for an easy one and they fell apart. The YouTube is right behind me on the screen, Kyle. Recliner Sports 4. That's the channel on YouTube. Come on over, guys. If you're over on TikTok, if you want to watch, then come on over. If you don't, then you can stay over there. But unfortunately, I'm not able to answer questions over on TikTok. I'm just on TikTok just to invite you guys over here to join us on the YouTube channel. Okay. So again, it's going to be a slow night tonight, guys. I think the Canadiens played terribly like that, and combined with it being a Sunday early evening game, I think we're probably looking at a slow show. So let's get right to the scoreboard. We have Ducks 3, Canadiens 2. Canadiens jump out to an early lead in the first period. They're actually playing really, really well. The Ducks look terrible. The Ducks are not a good team. They're playing, they're also not playing well. Troy Terry is out of the game, so they don't have him to rely on. Are arguably their best player. And so the Canadiens really have an opportunity here to take advantage of them. I even wrote in my takeaways, right? The first period, I was writing down my notes, and I said, the takeaway is, are you able to take advantage of a team on a bad night, right? So, so good teams, when they play another team that's not bringing their A game, they're able to take advantage of that. They're able to jump on top of them. And, that's kind of the questions I was asking, in the first period. Are the Canadiens going to be able to take advantage of this Anaheim team that is, not a great team and is showing up, and not, in the best of places to put on a performance. The Ducks are struggling. Troy Terry's out. Can you take advantage? This is an opportunity for you to get your mojo back, right? The Canadiens had lost 4 games in a row. This is an opportunity to get some of their mojo back. It's an opportunity for some of their guys, who struggled to get on the scoreboard to get some points. Some guys who, are slumping a little bit offensively. It's an opportunity for them to get those points and get some of that confidence back. Stay within your system, right? You can't get loose just because you're playing against a team that's not putting up a ton of competition. But they absolutely didn't. They completely and utterly failed in that endeavor. They completely dropped the ball, and they laid a complete egg. Right? They had an opportunity presented to them that was there for the taking, and they chose to take the easy way out. Right? They looked at this game as being an easy opportunity for them to coast through a win, and to just sort of get a free win out of it. And Anaheim wasn't having it, right? Anaheim just wasn't having it. They weren't prepared to give them a free game, and they paid for it. Montreal paid for it by not performing and not putting on not putting their best foot forward. They paid for it. And not only is this a loss that's going to go in the loss column, but it's also it's a horrible start to a West Coast road trip. Right, probably the easiest of the 3 games on the West Coast road trip. They've lost it now, so they're already behind the 8 ball going into San Jose and LA, and they're it's just a horrible way to start. It's just it's a step backwards. Like I said, this is the worst hockey they played since before Christmas. This is the worst hockey they've played since before Christmas. First period, Yoel Armia, shorthanded goal, 2-on-1 with Jake Evans. It was almost even a 3-on-1. Evans and Armia. Evans patiently waits. He makes a nice pass across to Armia. Armia puts a nice move on Dostal, and he beats him. The score is 1-0. It's shorthanded. Again, Anaheim looks terrible. I mean, you can give credit to Armia and Evans for a nice goal and for taking advantage of the Anaheim power play, but Anaheim was just pure garbage in that first period. They were terrible. Second goal, Dvorak from Matheson and Newhook on the power play. The power play 1 unit looked terrible. Power play 2 comes out and late on that power play. Good puck movement. A one-timer from the right circle by Mike Matheson, and Christian Dvorak gets the rebound and he buries it past Alex Dostal. It's 2-0 Montreal. That's at 14:57. So they have a shorthanded and a power play goal in the first period. They're heading into the intermission up 1-0 or 2-0. The shots after the first period were very much in favor of Montreal. I believe they were 11-6 or 10-5 or something like that. Pure domination in that first period by the Canadiens. But again, they decided to take advantage of that opportunity to just fall asleep and do nothing. They came out dead in the second period, and they didn't get very much opportunities. They let Anaheim back in the game, and at 13:37, Mason McTavish scores his 13th of the year from Killorn and Carlson. Complete breakdown in the defensive zone. Bad read, as I mentioned earlier, by Jake Evans. Killorn is allowed to step out from the boards and right into the right-hand circle, and he fires a wrist shot that deflects in off of Mason McTavish, and the score is 2-1. And of course, as we saw from the Canadiens back in October, November, one of their old bad habits, which they fell back into tonight, they allowed another goal right away. Right? They got down, they fell apart, they started sucking, and they started feeling sorry for themselves, and they started to they just didn't they fell asleep. They stopped playing hockey. They stopped skating. They stopped playing hockey. They stopped their structure. They stopped everything. So Frank Vatrano comes out 30 seconds later and scores a goal. David Savard makes a mistake at the blue line. He tries to get the puck and he misses. It allows Strome to enter the zone and get the puck, and he makes a nice pass to Vatrano at the left-hand circle, and Vatrano buries it past Sam Montembeault. 40 seconds after the previous goal. So they allowed 2 goals in 40 seconds. Right, that's an old habit. That's what we saw from the Montreal Canadiens in October and November. Right, this idea that 1 goal turns into 2 goals, turns into 3 goals, and that was the game. 40 seconds. 40 seconds was the game. right? They decided that they were going to have an easy game against a terrible team on a terrible night, and they just decided that they were going to play even more terrible than Anaheim and allow them to win the game, right? They decided that they were going to take a night off, and they thought that they could get a free win, and they paid for it dearly, right? They decided that they were going to stop skating and they were going to take it easy. And those 30 seconds, 40 seconds, Anaheim put 2 goals past them, and the game is tied. Right? It would have been such an easy game for them to just go out and play their game, and such an opportunity to take so much from that game, and they absolutely shit the bed. And then, of course, in the third period, Alex Killorn scores the winner. Another terrible play in the defensive zone by the Canadiens. Killorn gets the puck at the center line. He's allowed to skate into the zone unchallenged. He crosses the blue line. As he crosses the blue line, Arbor Jacki completely backs off him. The defensive zone coverage completely breaks down. He's allowed to walk right into the right-hand circle, up to the face-off dot, and he fires a wrist shot past Sam Montembeault. Montembeault, again, you can argue that he might have had that shot, maybe not, but again, the issue here is more so that he was able to skate from the center line all the way to the right face-off dot without anybody even putting, even breathing on him, let alone challenging him at all. No challenge whatsoever, and that's it. That's it, right? The Canadiens decided to have take 2 periods off. Well, and that was all she wrote. A terrible performance. The shots end up being 23-22 for Montreal. The Corsi 57-51 for Anaheim, and the Fenwick 35-34 for Montreal. High danger scoring chances 11-9, and the expected goals were slightly in favor of the Canadiens. But again, a terrible, terrible performance by the Canadiens. The only reason it's even remotely close in any of those statistics is because of how bad Anaheim is, right? It has nothing to do with the way Montreal played. Like, Montreal was playing a really bad hockey team on a really bad night tonight, and they decided that they were going to play just as bad. And it was a pathetic performance. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I perhaps sound like a broken record, but it is what it is. Jamie says, I think there are some guys who played well. We already dealt with that. Sorry, when defense isn't working, the goalies have a hard time. Personally, I think Monty did his part on offense. Defense didn't. I don't think that Montembeault was the issue tonight. I don't think that Montembeault was a problem tonight. Again, I don't think he had his best night of all time. And if he'd stood on his head, they might have pulled off a win. But again, I don't think anybody would place the blame for that game at Montembeault's feet. If Montreal doesn't at least get 1 point next game, this team isn't making it near a wild card and will be a 7th in our division, I think. Yeah, again, I'm not really that worried about them getting a wild card or not. I don't think it really makes a difference to me. What I'm more worried about is their development and what a game like tonight means for their development and what it means for their progress and the road moving forward. Hey, what's up, Jeff Perlman? What's going on over there? I see you over there. I love your stuff. Keep it up. Thank you. Thank you for popping by. We're talking about hockey. I don't know if you're much into hockey. I love talking baseball too, but and football. But anyways, if you're still here, thanks for popping by. This is a bad time to take any kind of losses because all the teams that are going into the playoff are making their push now in the second half. I think Montreal is not quite ready for that. Yeah, again, playoffs means absolutely nothing. I mean, playoffs means nothing. If the Canadiens make the playoffs, who gives a shit? If they don't, who gives a shit? I really don't. I don't think it means anything to this team right now. I don't think that their successes and failures are built on wins and losses. I don't think their successes and failures are built on making the playoffs. There's a scenario where they could have a good season and not make the playoffs, and there's a scenario where they could have a bad season and still make the playoffs. Probably less likely so. If they make the playoff, chances are they've had a good season. But again, it's more about development. It's more about improving. It's more about moving in the right direction with this team than it is about making the playoffs. I really couldn't care any less about whether or not this team makes the playoffs this year. I really couldn't. Especially at this stage of the season. Like, the idea that we're worrying about the playoffs in the first week of February is beyond wild to me. It just makes no sense. Again, my bigger concern about tonight's loss is what it means for their development and what it means for the way that they're moving forward. Like, there's players on this team tonight that showed me things that they're going to have to show me something else to prove that they're capable of being a part of a Stanley Cup winning team, right? There's guys who were out there on the ice tonight who played in a way that is not conducive to them being on a team that's going to compete seriously for a Stanley Cup, right? Because tonight was an opportunity, as easy an opportunity as you could possibly get for a win in the NHL. And there were a number of players out there tonight that literally acted like they were amateur hockey players. It was amateur hour out there tonight by a number of people. Goaltending has let the Habs down recently. I don't agree with that, Claudio. I think that's ill-informed. I don't believe that's an accurate statement. I don't think the goaltending has been an issue for the Canadiens in any way at all. Recently, I guess is the time frame that you've put on it. I was really excited for this season, but these types of games chalk my mental game a lot. I really hope that before the season ends, we will finish over 500. Yeah, I do too. I mean, I was prepared for this team to struggle this year. I knew that there would be struggles with, development and maturity and learning how to win and on all of that stuff. I knew that this wasn't going to be a year that was, full of excitement. But again, games like tonight they do test your patience, right? And again, for me, I'm not so much worried about the loss as I am about what I saw from some of those players. Laine only got one shift in the third, right? And again, I hesitate to say it, but again, this is the track record of Patrick Laine, and is this going to be? Does this get worse? How does he take being benched in the third period, right? Does he take it? Does he take it as an affront and get sooky and pissy and sort of go back into his shell? Or does he say, okay, I'm not going to let that happen anymore? And what kind of communication is he going to get from the team, right? Is the team going to sit him down and say, listen, man, we're not trying to hold you down or whatever, but we need more from you and we need you to do more? And is he going to take that to heart and go out and play better? Or is he going to just go into a shell and fall apart? I don't know. I really don't. And I every single part of me hopes that, he doesn't do what he did in the past when stuff like this happens, right? That he doesn't deal with being benched the way he did, in Columbus and in Winnipeg, and that he is on top of his game and on top of his mental health and on top of his everything better, and that he responds to that in a positive way and says, I got to be better. I really hope that's the case. But again, it's concerning. It's concerning for me. His performance tonight was not ideal. But again, neither was anybody else's, really. I mean, I had a hard time making my A team tonight because I really don't think there was anybody out there on the team that really deserved that recognition. Not one person, really. I mean, is there anybody on the team that you thought played a really good game? I mean, again, Armia might be the only one. What are my thoughts on Ryan Hartman? I think Ryan Hartman is arguably the dirtiest player in the NHL. If he was playing in just about any other market where he was getting more attention, people would know that he is one of the dirtiest, greasiest assholes in the entire league. He's far dirtier than Brad Marchand ever could dream of being. He's far dirtier than a Travis Konechny. He's far dirtier than a ton of players. He is as dirty as they come in the NHL. There's no place for players like that in the NHL. He, on numerous occasions, has attempted and successfully at times injured opposing players. And there's no room for him in the NHL. And the fact that he is not having the book thrown at him for, not just for this particular incident with, who was it? Anyways, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head right now. I should. But again, Ryan Hartman, I think, is the dirty, right up there with as dirty as they've ever been in the NHL. Olivier, merci. Welcome, Olivier. Thank you for coming. If Laine is the type that needs to be coddled, I think is what you mean, and shown love, then he is definitely in the right market. I don't know if that's sarcasm from you, Olivier. I think he's with the right team, and I think he's with the right coach. I think coddled and shown love, I think is what the Canadiens are trying to do right now. I think that Martin St. Louis is a progressive coach. I don't think he coaches in the old traditional way. I don't know that it's so much about coddling and love as much as it is not about sort of the old, learning by discipline and punishment and penalizing players. I don't know that that's the situation here, but again, I think in Montreal, I think it is a different scenario, and I think they will work with him, and I think that there's a place for that. I personally think that the old style coaching is on the way out the door, and it just doesn't work. He's not a really great player. That's all he's good at. LOL. Well, again, you're an idiot, Benoit. So, you're talking about Benoit. Sorry, you're talking about Ryan Hartman. Sorry, I thought you were talking about Patrick Laine. He's actually not a terrible hockey player, Ryan Hartman. He's actually got some skill and some talent, but for whatever reason, he doesn't seem to be able to control his emotions, and he does stupid things far too often on the ice. But yeah, he has talent. If he could stop doing some of this stupid stuff and learn to control himself, then he could be a lot better. But the reality is he actually gets away with it quite a bit because of, again, like I said, he's generally played in smaller markets and hasn't really been exposed to, it's Stützle, that's right, Muck. I forgot. Where was the first line tonight? Didn't see much of them do too much. You're right, they didn't. For the first time in quite some time, Frank, the first line was largely invisible tonight, including Nick Suzuki, who has probably been the most consistent performer on the Montreal Canadiens since the second week of the season, which is why I say tonight looked like a bit of a step backwards and a step back to where this team was in October and November, because this is the kind of performance we saw from them early on in the season. Don't let the score fool you, right? We had lots of games this year where they lost by 5 or 6 goals. We had not a lot of games, but a few games where they lost by 5 or 6 goals. This loss, losing 3-2 to that team that was against the Montreal Canadiens tonight, was like losing 8-0 to a good team. That team had nothing tonight. They had absolutely nothing. Right? Like that was a, like, again, if that was against, Florida or Toronto, or Colorado or Las Vegas, like that's like losing 8-1 to those guys. You live in Montreal, Benoit. Tu habites à Montréal. I used to live in Montreal. I do not anymore. J'habitais à Montréal quand j'étais jeune, mais maintenant j'habite à Nouvelle-Écosse. Si vous voulez poser les questions en français, vous pouvez poser les questions en français. On peut répondre en français si vous voulez aussi. Yeah, again, Benoit, I think you're right. I think Montreal, je pense que Montréal, c'est une équipe qui, c'est une reconstruction. Ils vont être meilleurs l'an prochain, mais pour maintenant, on veut voir un développement, on veut voir une équipe qui devient mieux en mieux, match par match. Et pour moi, ce soir, c'est un gros pas en arrière. On a vu beaucoup de pas en avant depuis le fin de décembre. Mais ce soir, c'est un gros pas en arrière pour Montréal. Même les derniers jeux où ils ont perdu 4 matchs de suite, c'est encore une meilleure équipe qu'on a vue au début de la saison. Mais pour moi, ce soir, c'est la même équipe qu'on a vue en octobre et en novembre. Alors, c'est un gros pas en arrière. Pour moi, c'est le premier match d'un road trip en Californie. C'est une opportunité de battre une équipe qui n'est pas très bonne, qui ne joue pas bien. Ils ont perdu leur meilleur joueur avant le match et ils n'ont pas pris avantage. Ils n'ont pas pris avantage. C'est pas seulement qu'ils n'ont pas pris avantage, ils ont joué un match comme s'ils savaient que c'était pas une bonne équipe. Ils avaient une opportunité de jouer un très bon match, prendre avantage d'une équipe qui ne joue pas bien. Ils ont joué moins bien que l'équipe qui joue pas bien. Going back to the speech analogy, how would you explain the Habs' recent play? Yeah, it's a good, again, I think that they're working on another aspect of the speech, Muck. Right? Like they're working on another aspect of the speech. Maybe they're trying to do another aspect of the speech, and it's not coming to them. Maybe that's a situation where um, they're not focused and they're not concentrated. And so sometimes, you go to work on your speech and you go to practice it in front of the mirror, but you're not really paying attention to it. You're thinking about other things that are going on in your life, and you're screwing it up over and over and over again, right? And you take steps backwards. So it's a great question, Muck, and I appreciate you coming back to that speech analogy. But you're right. Where does it fit into that analogy, right? And again, the speech analogy might not work in the sense that well, it does work, I think, because development is not linear, right? Every step is not in the right direction. Some steps are backwards, right? You take 4 steps forward, and then you take a step backwards, and then you take another 2 or 3 steps forward, and then you take a step backwards. It's not step forward, step forward, step forward, step forward. So, it is what it is. James, who do I have winning the Calder with Hudson being on a bad point streak right now? I think it's still between Hudson and Celebrini. I think those are the two. I would say that Celebrini probably was the leading candidate all along, and this recent little bit here by Hudson hasn't helped. I think that Michkov's fallen off the pace. I don't think he's really in there anymore. I guess Dustin Wolf would be in the conversation as well. Nova Scotia has better roads and nicer people than Quebec. I don't know about that. It's a little bit friendlier place, I guess, than Quebec or than Montreal. Some of our roads are better. Oui, mais l'an prochain, avec Demidov, Montréal va être le fun de watch. Oui, c'est sûr qu'ils vont être le fun de watch, mais de regarder, d'écouter le match, mais c'est pas certain. On n'est pas certain de qu'est-ce que Demidov va apporter à l'équipe. C'est pas un garantie pour moi. C'est le KHL, c'est pas le LNH, c'est pas la même chose. La qualité de jeu, c'est pas la même au KHL. Alors moi, j'espère que Demidov va venir à Montréal puis il va jouer pour Montréal. Ça va être un joueur productif pour le Canadien, mais c'est pas certain. C'est pas certain qu'on va le mettre sur le deuxième alignement. Il va être un compteur de 30 buts la première année. Il n'y a pas de garantie là pour moi. Alors, c'est le fun d'écouter les matchs de Demidov, mais on va voir ce qu'il va apporter l'an prochain. With the second half underway, I'd be amazed if Montreal could put 10 wins till the end of the season if they keep playing this way. Yeah, I don't know if I would go that far, Frank. If they play the way they played tonight, then they'll have a hard time winning 10 more games. But we shall see. Steph Leblanc, what are the coming games? Can they bounce back, in my opinion? Well, it depends on what team shows up, Steph Leblanc, right? Ça dépend de quelle équipe vont jouer. Like if they play the way they've played in the first 2 or 3 weeks of January, then yeah, they absolutely can. They play San Jose on Tuesday and they play in LA on Wednesday, and then they come back home and play afternoon games against New Jersey and somebody else. But again, it depends on what team shows up. Ça dépend quelle équipe on va voir. Pour moi, ils nous ont démontré cette année qu'ils sont capables de jouer un très fort match, mais ils ont aussi démontré ce soir qu'ils sont capables de jouer pas très fort. They've shown that they can play really, really well, and they've shown that they can really play badly. And it's tonight was a pathetic performance. Tonight was, I think, it was by far their worst performance since before Christmas. There's no doubt about that. What's up, Entertap? You missed the first 2 periods of this game. Maybe that's a good thing. The first period wasn't too bad, Entertap, but the second and third were pretty horrible. Good news is the Habs have the 4th best remaining strength of schedule. Yeah, again, I don't think it really matters, Entertap. To me, if they make the playoffs, I could care less. Like, I really could. It couldn't matter to me any less if this team makes the playoffs. It's all about whether or not they continue, to become better and to improve and to develop. And tonight was a step way in the wrong direction. This was a step back towards the team that we saw in October and November. Every team has slumps. I can see the Habs figuring it out and getting a win streak going. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Muck. Every team does have slumps, and I knew that they would have a step backwards. And we've certainly been seeing that for the last 10 days or 2 weeks or so. But again, tonight to me was just like the game was presented to them on a silver platter. And, all they had to do was go out and put an average performance on the ice and just stick to their game plan and play their game, and it would have been an easy win for them. And they chose instead to take the easy, lazy, slacker way out. And it bit them in the ass. They played that first period and they said to themselves, guys, this is an easy one. This is a bad team. They don't have their A game. We can just go out there and we can cruise and coast our way through this game. And it bit them in the ass. And to me, that's unacceptable. That's far worse than anything else they could possibly do. Again, and I will never ever in a million years call into account anybody's effort. I'm not saying that anybody wasn't trying out there. I'm just saying that their mental game was not there tonight, because that was an easy team to beat. The Laval Rocket would have had a better chance of beating that team tonight. Il manque 5 points pour faire les séries avec 30 games restants. Il faut gagner minimum 30 games sur 30. 20 games sur 30. Mais pour moi, Benoît, ça me fait rien d'être dans les séries, pour moi. Pour moi, le succès de cette équipe, ça n'a rien à faire avec les séries, pour moi. Pour moi, c'est une équipe qui doit continuer de devenir meilleure, de développer, de devenir une meilleure équipe. Alors, être dans les séries, c'est pas un marqueur de succès pour moi, pour cette équipe. C'est une équipe qui va pas être... leur succès serait pas dépendant s'ils font les séries, pour moi. Ça fait rien, les séries. S'ils font les séries, ça dit quoi? Pour moi, s'ils arrivent dans les séries, ils vont perdre dans la première ronde. Alors, il y a rien à faire d'être dans les séries. It doesn't matter if this team makes the playoffs. It means absolutely nothing to them. If they make the playoffs, they're what are they going to do in the playoffs? They're not going to go on a run. Yes, would it give them some experience? Would it be nice to have those young guys get some playoff experience? Would it be nice for Kirby Dach and Kirby Dach and Lane Hudson and some of those younger players, Uri Slavkovsky, to get some playoff experience and see what it feels like? That's the only benefit to this team making the playoffs. But beyond that, the playoffs mean absolutely nothing to this team. What's up, Hunter? Welcome. I agree with playoffs are not to the be-all, but how do they develop and play the rest of the way? Yeah, absolutely. So to me, if they continue to play well and they continue to bring more of what we've seen in the last 2 months as opposed to what we saw in the first 2 months for the rest of the year, then to me the season's a success whether they make the playoffs or not. Should the Habs prepare a package to bring Alex Lafreniere to Montreal? I heard they were shopping him. Absolutely not, Olivier. Pourquoi on voudrait Alexis Lafreniere à Montréal? Why would we bring Alexis Lafreniere to Montreal? I don't see any real purpose in bringing him in. They play better against contenders. Well, I don't know if they haven't. They haven't of late. They didn't play well against Toronto. They didn't play well against Winnipeg. Well, they did play okay against Winnipeg. They just played really badly tonight. Yeah, I think there were a lot of passengers tonight. I think there were more passengers than there were. I struggled to make my A team tonight. And to be honest with you, I can really only point to one guy who I legitimately think could stand up and proudly say that he had a decent game tonight, and that's Yoel Armia. I don't know that anybody else on the team could really do that. It seems like the team started slumping when Goulet got injured. Maybe Goulet is more important than people think. Well, I mean, Gooley is important. I never thought that Gooley wasn't important. I think Gooley um, is a bedrock on their defensive core. I think he's a really, spectacular player. Pour moi, Gooley, c'est un des les meilleurs joueurs de défense de l'équipe. He's a solid force back there. He's a leader. At his young age, he's been around for a while. Um, I don't know if the slump coincides with him getting injured so much, but again, it shows that they don't have the depth yet to deal with a significant injury like that. They don't have the mental maturity to deal with an injury like that right now. Like they're not dealing with adversity is a main topic, right, of mature hockey teams. How do you deal with things when they go badly? And losing a guy like Gooley, yeah, you're going to have to bring in another guy to take that spot. Um, I don't think that Jaden Struebel's been a problem. I think Jaden Struebel has done quite a good job considering how long it was since he last played in the NHL. I think he's doing all right, right? I think that Michael Pezzetta isn't doing a terrible job, especially when you consider how long it's been since he played in the NHL. But losing Heineman and Gooley have obviously had a big impact on this team. And at this point, they lack the depth of guys who can step in and take on that role. Right? Do you have guys waiting who can jump into those roles when those guys get hurt? I think Montreal keeps losing. They'll be seller at the trade deadline. What do I think? I don't think it changed at all, Frank. I don't think they were going to be buyers in any significant way at the deadline, regardless. If you've listened to Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton, they've continuously said that they're not going to sacrifice young players and prospects and draft picks to bring in veterans. And I don't, even if they were in a playoff push, yeah, would they bring in a guy who's maybe in his mid-20s to do whatever? But I don't think they were going to be significant buyers regardless. So again, I don't think it matters whether they're winning or losing as to how they treat the trade deadline. Entertap, based on what I saw in the third, it seemed like Dvorak might be on my A team as well. You know what? He could have been, but he's not. He could have been. It's actually not a bad point. He probably could be. Let's get there. Let's do it. So there it is, guys. There's your A team for tonight. Again, for the first time in quite some time, it was hard to pick an A team tonight. It was hard to pick an A team tonight. So, it hasn't been that hard recently, but tonight was not easy. There was really nobody that deserved to be on the A team tonight. Entertap, you raised a good point with Dvorak. He probably could have easily been there in place of Anderson or Evans, I would say. But again, it wasn't a ton of competition to make this, or there was a ton of competition, or not, depending on when you look at it, I guess. Armia, Anderson, Evans, and Doc. Those are the four guys on the A team for tonight. That's the way I saw it. What do you guys think? Again, I'm not going to get into any great depth of analysis on any of that stuff. So I'll leave it to you guys to let me know whether there's guys you think should be on there, guys that you don't. What do you think, guys? Any thoughts? Armia, Anderson, Evans, and Doc. I hesitated to put Evans on there because of, the bad read that he made on the first goal. I thought Anderson played a good game. Armia, like I said, was the only surefire guy to put on that team. But sorry about the off-topic questions, but what do I think about the Canucks' future? Can they come back from the turmoil of this season? That is off-topic. I don't. I think the Canucks are in big trouble. The Canucks were a team that I saw on the rise last year. I talked to a number of people when I used to do TikTok Lives before I started doing YouTube, and I would get a lot of Vancouver fans on there, and we would talk about the team. And, Obviously the Canucks fans all thought that their team was, a Stanley Cup contender. And, my approach to the Canucks always was, they'll make the playoffs this year and they'll go and they'll get some good experience. And, after a couple years of getting some experience, they'll eventually work their way into being a contender for the Stanley Cup, right? You've got to lose before you can win. And I talked about that time and time and time again with Vancouver Canucks fans. And, they would often get angry with me and they would, disagree with me and tell me that I was wrong. And I said, well, you need experience in the playoffs in order to do that and move forward. And they've got good players, but they just, they lack some of that experience. And if they're going to, the Western Conference is competitive, and if they're going to get past teams like Colorado and Las Vegas and Dallas and Edmonton, they're going to have to lose first to get, that experience so that they can move on. But realistically, things are just falling apart there now, right? Like, JT Miller's gone, arguably their best player. Well, no, not arguably their best player. Quinn Hughes is clearly their best player. But, one of their best forwards, let's say, and, Pettersson doesn't seem to be performing, and I don't know whether, Miller leaving will help that or not. I don't know. But the rest of the team doesn't seem to be stepping up either, and there also seems to be, factions that have developed in that dressing room between, the Pettersson people and the JT Miller people. And that's not a good thing. And, if that continues, their development towards being a Stanley Cup contender is going to struggle. It's not gonna work. And so, I see them, I don't see them being able to bring this back around. And I mean, frankly, I think, again, I hesitate to do this because I think he's a fantastic hockey player. But again, you've got to call into question, Quinn Hughes's leadership, right? He's the leader of that team. He's the captain. Now I get that he's young, and I believe he's younger than both Pettersson and JT Miller. But if you're the captain of the team, you have a role to play there. You have a role to play in sorting that out. And again, maybe that's a good cautionary tale for teams that like to give the captaincy to their, best players, even though they're too young, that maybe they're not ready to handle some of that conflict. And so again, with a guy like Quinn Hughes, whose contract is coming up not too far down the road, is he going to want to stick around in Vancouver, or is he going to want to go and play with his brothers in New Jersey? So again, these are a ton of questions that come up in response to your question, Muck. And again, I'm not going to profess to know a ton about the ins and outs of Vancouver. I'm not an expert on it by any means, but that's kind of where I'm at with my thoughts on Vancouver. If you're over on TikTok, guys, follow the conversation here behind us. Come over and join us on YouTube, and we can answer your questions over there. We're on YouTube, and we're over on TikTok, just to let you guys know that we're doing a show over here, and you can come ask your questions over here if you want. I see you, Isaiah. And if you want to come over and join us on YouTube, that would be awesome. Anderson has one of his best seasons. Anderson is playing quite well. Yeah, I mean, Anderson has found his niche, right? He's realized what his role is on the team and how he can best contribute and help the team, and he's doing that, right? He's not going to score 27 goals like he did in Columbus, but he can contribute in other ways. If you compare a team like Montreal and Edmonton, you can tell easily that Montreal are not that great. They are missing those kind of elite players like the best teams have. Yeah, that's not the biggest difference I see between Montreal and Edmonton, Benoit. I think Montreal does have those elite players. I mean, obviously, they don't have a McDavid because I don't think there's very many players like McDavid out there. But again, they potentially have elite hockey players. I mean, they have, guys who are capable or may at some point in their career be capable of being, 80, 90, 100-point guys. Again, they're all young, and we'll see if they can develop into that. The biggest difference between Montreal and Edmonton to me is just, age and experience, right? Like if Slavkovsky turns into the player he's supposed to be, if Caulfield continues to build into the player he's supposed to be, if Suzuki continues to improve, if Demidov comes along and turns out to be the player he's supposed to be, then again, I don't see that there's that huge of a difference, other than the fact that Edmonton is 5 or 6 years ahead of Montreal, in their cycle. So again, I don't see elite players being the biggest difference for Edmonton. And I'll say this about Edmonton: the problem with Edmonton is that they didn't win when they had their chance. They didn't win inside of their window. And now being a team that's going to end up paying Draisaitl $14 million and probably $16 million plus for McDavid, that's going to be tough to win with that much money at the top of your salary cap. The salary cap going up. I'm surprised nobody's asked about that yet tonight, but the salary cap going up will help. But again, their time to win was when McDavid and Draisaitl were on their second contracts, not their third. I think Pettersson has an attitude problem. I haven't been in the locker room, but I get that feeling. What's up, Isaiah? Great to see you over here. Thank you. I'll get to your question in a second. Pettersson, I don't know if he has an attitude problem. I don't know what the issue is. Again, I hate to speculate about stuff like that. I mean, I think it's well known that JT Miller is a bit of an asshole, and that's just the way he is. Pettersson, I think, is probably just on the opposite end of that scale, right? I like he's a pretty quiet, soft, maybe kind of guy. But again, I don't want to get too far into speculating about all that. But again, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. My thoughts on the Flyers trade a couple days ago. I mean, those are two young, good hockey players that Philadelphia got rid of. Again, I don't profess to know a ton about the Flyers, and I don't profess to know a ton about the trade itself. But I just want to bring something up here. Like again, I don't. Again, you know way more about those teams than I do. Calgary. Well, you know more about Flyers for sure. Frost and Farabee to me are two guys, young kids with potential, who didn't get along with John Tortorella. Again, I know you don't necessarily agree with me on this topic, Isaiah, but I think that John Tortorella being a coach on a rebuilding hockey team is a problem. I don't think it's a good idea, and I don't think he's the right man for that job. Whether those two guys are good hockey players or not, or whether again. His job is to develop those guys, and the fact that they're giving up on two 25 or 26-year-old guys is kind of problematic for me. Kuzmenko in return, and who else did they get? Kuzmenko and Peltier. I mean, Kuzmenko has the potential to be a good hockey player. Obviously, he has some connection, I think, with Michkov. Maybe that's what they're looking for. But again, if you're rebuilding, I don't know why you're giving up on two guys that young who have shown some potential. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, did Farabee not have 25 goal, like a couple 25 goal seasons already? So again, Tortorella to me is a problem in Philadelphia. And if you've got, if your team is quitting on two kids who are 25, 26 years old because, the coach doesn't like them or they can't get along with the coach or whatever, like that's tough. That's tough. I mean, I don't know whether you agree with me on that or not, Isaiah, but like Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost, like, I don't know, let's look at their numbers. Farabee, DB. Like Joel Farabee. So Joel Farabee had 50 points last year. 22 goals and 28 assists. And he's 24 years old. So as a 23-year-old, he had 50 points last year. And you're getting rid of them. You're getting rid of him. And Morgan Frost had 25 points this year, and he had 41 points last year. So, again, if these guys, like John Tortorella's job is to develop these guys, and if he's got a problem with them, then it's his job to fix it. It just seems really, really counterintuitive to me for a rebuilding team to be getting rid of a 24 and 25-year-old, both of whom, one guy had 50 points last year, and the other guy had 46. The other guy had 46 and 41 in the last 2 years. Like, those are guys who should be cornerstones of your team going forward. After this season, he should be gone. I've lost my patience with Tortorella because of how he is treating Michkov and with Frost and Farabee. I'm glad the two of them are getting a fresh start. Going to miss them, I presume you're going to say. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to play the I told you so game, and I won't. I mean, I'm not going to be that guy. But again, like, to me, Tortorella coaching a young, rebuilding team is completely bizarre. Because he does not have the ability to get along with young hockey players. Right, and you're seeing it with Michkov now, right? You're seeing it with Michkov. And I said at the beginning of the year, like, Tortorella and Michkov together is going to be like oil and water, and it's only a matter of time before they get in a fight. And, as you say, Enertap, they weren't Tort favorites, and that's a problem. And that's why I think that Montreal, did so well in hiring Marty St. Louis. Because, if you listen to, I don't know if you listened to it, but the interview that Kent Hughes did with Matthias Brunet the other day, where he talked about, he says that hiring Marty St. Louis is one of the decisions he's the most proud of since he became the GM of the Canadiens. And one of the first things they were looking for when they were hiring a new coach was emotional intelligence, right? And there's going to be a lot of people out there that say, emotional intelligence, don't be so soft. Like, what are you talking about? But you know what? The days of, oh, suck it up and be tough, and, the coach is going to scream and yell at you and treat you like a piece of shit, and you're going to be better for it, and, we're going to teach you by punishing you, by benching you and putting you in the press box. Those days are gone. Those days are gone. That never worked, right? I mean, people will say it worked. They'll point to guys like Scotty Bowman, and they'll point to guys like Pat Quinn and whatever, but that never worked. You're going to get more, you're going to get more out of your players by communicating with them properly and treating them like human beings than you are by treating them like children. Benoit, I think Edmonton is a top 5 contender for the Cup this year. They're still on top. They have what it takes to build a dynasty. I don't agree, Benoit. I agree with you that they're a contender this year, but after maybe this year, after maybe next year, they have a chance. But after that, they're done. They don't have a chance. If they're paying Connor McDavid over $16 million, and they're paying Draisaitl $14 million, and they're paying Evan Bouchard $10 million plus, and they're paying, defensemen, Darnell Nurse, 9.5. Like, they're not. I mean, Michkov and Torts had a spat, and he benched him. Yeah, I mean, that was the most predictable thing in the world, Isaiah. I mean, I'm not playing the I told you so game, but I mean, last year, I told you, and I told everybody that eventually, the Flyers were playing quite well last year, and you and I had our prolific fight where you posted a video about me and I posted a video about you. You didn't like me because I said Torts was a bad coach, and my point was that, the Flyers are doing really, really good right now, and they were at the time, but eventually Torts is going to fuck this up, and he did, right? He went out, he went in a press conference and he talked about Bobby Brink and I think it was Farabee, and talked about how stupid they were in front of the assembled media for the entire world to see, and then he decided he was going to bench Sean Couturier, the captain of the team and a beloved leader to all the players and whatever, and the team tanked on him, and they fell apart, right? Like, the playoffs were on a silver platter for Philadelphia last year, and Torts fucked it up, and it was the most predictable thing in the world. And at the beginning of this year, they announced that Michkov was going to come over from Russia 2 years earlier, and the first thing I said was, how long is it going to be before Torts and Michkov get into a fight, and Michkov's pissed off at Torts, and Torts is pissed off at Michkov, and he's getting healthy scratched and whatever. And it didn't take long. It didn't take long. Torts is not built to coach a team like the Philadelphia Flyers right now. He's just not. And them hiring him, I mean, again, you can go back and look at my TikTok. The day they hired him, I made a video. The day they hired him, I made a video and said how dumb a move that was for them to hire him. You go back on my TikTok. You can go back on my TikTok feed, and you can look at the day that John Tortorella was hired by the Flyers. Like, the dumbest move I've seen in a long time. What are my thoughts on the fact that 4 of the last 5 Cup winners are from tax-free states? I think it's largely coincidental, Muck. I don't think it's. I don't think that people understand fully the tax implications of playing in the NHL. It obviously provides an advantage to tax-free teams that play in tax-free states. More so, it provides a disadvantage to teams that play in high-tax states. But again, just in case you don't understand it completely, there are no players in the NHL who are not paying income tax. Every player in the NHL is paying significant income tax. It's just that some are paying more than others. So I don't know that it's a huge factor, Muck. All I'm saying is the one player that needs to be gone by the end of the season is Scott Laughton. Trade him to the Leafs. He's a liability. But yeah, I agree. Torch just ain't the same coach. Yeah, I don't know if I would say he's not the same coach. He's not the right coach. And yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, if I'm being completely honest, John Tortorella was never a good coach. He had some success, but again, he was never a good coach. You know, his Stanley Cups, I think, were won in Tampa Bay despite him, as opposed to because of him. If you go back and look historically, you can look this up. You can go back and look at, you know, the Stanley Cups when they won in Tampa Bay. Like, he wanted to get rid of Lecavalier, right? He told the management Lecavalier's got to go. Vincent Lecavalier is he can't play on my team. He's not good enough. I don't like him on my team, and you guys need to get rid of him. And the general manager, to his credit, said no. He stays. Make it work. So to be honest with you, if Tortorella had his way in Tampa Bay, he probably wouldn't have even won those Stanley Cups. And the only reason he won was because the general manager basically, you know, told him off and said, no, we're not doing that. Yes, Benoit. The money aspect is going to be a problem for Edmonton going forward. I think that the salary cap, I think we had an announcement this week from the NHL and the NHLPA about the salary cap going up significantly. I think that's going to help teams like Edmonton, and it's going to save teams like Toronto a little bit. It's going to save them from their bad management. But I do think it's going to be really hard to win the Stanley Cup when you've got 2 guys making $30 million. Which, by the way, is the reason why it made absolutely no sense whatsoever for the Montreal Canadiens to be in the market for Mikko Rantanen. For those who were calling for Montreal to be in that conversation. You always hear hockey is a business. Successful businesses have engaged employees who want to be there. Hockey is no different. Yeah, I think that's probably right, Billy D. I think it's a little bit different in the sense that the players are making exorbitant amounts of money. And I think historically the argument always was, well, you're making this kind of money, you know, you should be able to take the abuse and whatever that you get from your coaching. And there was this sort of idea that, you know, the only way to coach was by screaming and yelling and emotionally and mentally manipulating your players. And I think those days are gone. Thank you very much, Frank. You have a good evening as well. I appreciate it. Thank you. The thumbs up. Guys, if you're in the live and you haven't hit the thumbs up button yet, give us one. We've only got 6 so far. Apparently there's 11 people watching right now and only 6 thumbs up. If you're not yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button down below. We're trying to build a community here. We go live after every Canadiens game. We do Habs After Dark. We will be premiering a new show called Habs Therapy Day coming up in the next week or so. Which will be probably on Wednesday evenings. And so if you're interested in any of that, if you're watching either live or in a replay and you like the content and you enjoy the show, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give us a thumbs up. That would be awesome. I'll be making a new video, and my views have changed after them tanking last season. Yeah, again, I appreciate that, Isaiah. I've appreciated our conversations, and I've appreciated the way we were able to turn around the way we were with each other from the beginning till now. So I appreciate that. Babcock comes close. Yeah, well, again, Babcock I think is probably the exemplification or the that again, it just doesn't work. That type of coaching doesn't work. And it's amazing to me the number of people in hockey that still think that that's the way to coach. And you can go and listen to Pierre Maguire on Tony Marinaro as early as I think it was October or September, where he gives a horrible interview where he talks about basically emotionally torturing players into performing well, and that that was the way Scotty Bowman taught him, and that's the way he thinks that coaching should be in the NHL, and that you take ice time away from players until it gets to the point where their wives and their families are questioning them, and their paychecks are on the line and stuff like that, and that's the only way to get an NHL player to perform is by taking away the things that they most love, and it's absurd to me. And I couldn't be happier that the Montreal Canadiens have hired, a coach who takes a completely different approach to coaching than that. Do I think Marner will remain a Leaf after this season? Yes, thank you, Benoit. You take care as well. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you subscribing. That's awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you. Do I think Marner will remain a Leaf after this season? I have no idea. I think the fact that the cap is going up will maybe embolden the Leafs a little bit to try and keep him. Do I think he should stay a Leaf? He's a good hockey player, but I don't think you can pay him. I don't think you can pay him that much. Pat Burns and Pat Quinn era was great. Great for who? Great for who? It wasn't great for the players. Marner's a hard call. I mean, the reality is I don't think they can keep all three of those guys at over $12 million. I mean, I think Nylander, I think, is making 11.5. He might, you can't have three guys making $12 million. You can't have $36 million on three guys. It just doesn't work. You're not going to win that way. You have a fun team to watch. That may have worked once upon a time, but today's kids are built differently and need more of a mentor as a coach. Yeah, you know what, Entertap, I agree with that to an extent, but I would go a step further and say that, it never worked. And that the kids were no different back in the day than they are now. The reality is that the ones that couldn't handle it back in those days just fell by the wayside, and we've never heard of them, right? We never heard of them. We never heard about them because they just couldn't. They couldn't take it. They couldn't deal with that kind of coaching. They couldn't deal with that kind of mental abuse, and they just didn't become hockey players, right? They became firemen and electrician and plumbers and whatever. And now, because the world is different, and because there's a lot more exposure, and there's a lot more there are a lot more eyes on what goes on the team. We see it a lot more. But I would argue, I would contend that the players back in the 50s and 60s and 70s were no different than the ones are today. It's just that back then it was kind of more understood that, if you didn't have the mental acuity or the mental for the strength, the mental strength, or the mental wherewithal, or whatever you want to call it, to deal with it, you just didn't make it. You didn't make it, and then nobody ever heard of you. Jacques Demers seemed to be a real players coach and all-around great person. Yeah, I think he was. The thing that always bothered me about Jacques Demers was he was always trying to send messages, right? Like, it drives me crazy when I hear people talk about that. Who are the, who like, why are you sending, like, if you want to send a player a message, talk to him. It's not like there's not a million opportunities for you to talk to these guys, right? You're in the same building 12 hours a day. You're on airplanes together. The opportunity to talk to these guys is there all the time. So why are you communicating to them in code? Why are you sending them messages by, by benching them or by, saying code, passing coded messages in the press. I don't get that. If you're over on TikTok, guys, come on over to YouTube. The channel is Recliner Sports 4, like it says on the back of the screen here behind me. Come on over. If you have questions, Cater, I see you over there. Come on over and ask your questions over here on YouTube. The show is on YouTube. We're only on TikTok just to let you guys know that we're here and to invite you to come on over and join us. But yeah, that's, again, I don't know that kids have, I will say this, I think back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, even the 80s, I guess, I think you had to have that mental strength to make it, because if you didn't, you were eventually going to run into a coach that was going to test that. And, I think there's a ton of kids. I think there's probably a ton of players out there that didn't get the proper opportunity to make it to the NHL because they had to deal with an asshole coach. And frankly, I don't think that the ability to deal with mental abuse should be a condition upon somebody becoming an NHL hockey player. I mean, if that's what we're talking about, right? Like, that's, like, to me, your ability to withstand, the onslaught of psychological warfare that some of these coaches put on their players. If your ability to handle that is a condition on you being able to play in the NHL, I think that's absurd. I think it's ridiculous. Right? Like, you're 19, 20 years old and you're trying to make it to the NHL and you're trying to figure out, we're grown-ups, right? We're grown-ups and we can see that, okay, well, this kid's been benched because he's not doing this or he's not doing that or he's not performing or he's not. But these are 18, 19, 20-year-old kids trying to live out their dreams. Right? They're not as mature as we are as grown-ups watching the game. They're not, they're in the middle of it. Like, they're emotionally, engaged in it. They're emotionally attached to it. And all of a sudden they're being asked to start, decoding these messages that their coaches are trying to send them. All they want to do is play hockey. And to me, as a hockey coach, your job is to put those kids in the best place to succeed and to be able to play hockey. Right? Your job is to give them the opportunity and put them in the best scenario where they can, perform and excel at playing hockey. Not, F around with their brain so much that they don't even know what's up and what's down anymore. And that's happened. Like, that's happened to hundreds of players over the years. All right, guys, things are kind of cooling down here a little bit. Everyone's gotten real quiet. What's going on here? What did I just do there? I didn't mean to do that. Do you want to get to the report card here, guys? What do you think? Do you think the report card looks good or bad tonight? I'll give you a hint. It ain't good. The report card ain't good tonight. We got one check mark, and the only check mark is for allowing 3 or fewer goals, right? They lost 3-2, so they make a check mark in the defensive goals against side of things. But they allowed, they failed to score 3 or more goals. They only scored 2. They were 1 for 4 on the power play. They also scored a shorthanded goal. I probably could have given them a check mark there, but I just didn't feel like it because I was so angry and disappointed with the way that they played. Actions that helped the other team, like, take your pick. Dozens of them tonight. Weathering the storm. What storm? Anaheim had absolutely nothing tonight. They're a bad team that lost their best player, and they were playing terribly, and they were completely at the mercy of the Montreal Canadiens. There was no storm to weather, and the Canadiens still failed to even do that. Dealing with adversity, right? No. Terrible. Right? They didn't even have to deal with adversity tonight. They had to deal with everything going in their favor, and they still fucked it up. They still messed it up. Right? They didn't have any adversity to deal with. Everything was presented to them on a silver platter, and they still weren't able to come through. No FU factor tonight. There's just, nothing. They didn't play for 60 minutes. There was nothing there tonight. It was a terrible, pathetic performance. Worst game since before Christmas. Again, I'm not going to dwell on that report card. I'm not going to leave it up on the board here for very long. But again, there's nothing really to to really talk about there. It was a horrible, pathetic performance, a step backwards. I think it's their first real step backwards since since Christmas time. That's why I get so upset with fans bashing and players. Slav took a lot of social media punishment in his right. We have as fans, we have no idea what's going on with these players, right? We don't know, we don't know what is contributing to their performance and production on the ice. If a player is playing badly, we have no idea why. Maybe they've got problems at home. Maybe they're working on a new part of their game. Maybe they're playing through an injury. Maybe their coach has their brain tied in a pretzel and they have no idea what's expected of them. Maybe we don't know, we don't know any of this stuff, right? So again, I'm with you, Billy. I don't like to criticize players at all, whether it's young or old, because at the end of the day, we have no idea what's going on. Like for instance, Logan Mailloux, right? Everybody keeps talking about how Logan Mailloux is playing so badly down in Laval, but we don't know. Maybe they have him working on different aspects of his game. Maybe they have him working on his defensive game, and he's focused on that, which makes him makes his offensive production go down. And now everyone assumes that he's playing badly. Like last year with Cole Caulfield, right? Everybody thought Cole Caulfield was regressing, and then he only scored 30 or whatever it was, 28 goals or whatever it was last year. His offensive game's falling off. My God, Cole Caulfield, he's a bust. Well, no, he was working on his game, and now this year he looks better than ever. So again, I think it's really tough for people who sit in front of a TV and watch the games, and even ones who spend enough time to go on YouTube like me and do enough research, and I do more than most. I pay attention to the Montreal Canadiens more than most, I can say without bragging. But again, it would be completely unfair for me to judge these players in any real meaningful way because I have no idea. Absolutely no clue. Sometimes embarrassing losses spark a win streak. We'll see what happens. But that's the problem, Muck. I don't know that this was an embarrassing loss. I just think it was an embarrassing performance. It's an embarrassing loss. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know what it does. To me, it's just an absolute shame because it was a great opportunity to kick off this road trip on a positive note right there. This was probably the easiest of the 3 games on this road trip. San Jose, and then they go into LA. And, this was the one where they could have really gotten themselves a little bit of momentum, right? Anaheim was not playing well. They're not a good team. They're missing their best player. They could have really gone out and done and fixed a lot of problems tonight in this game by just going out and skating their balls off and playing really good hockey, staying within their system and using a team like that to their advantage. And they just utterly failed. They could have taken that momentum into San Jose and then into LA, but they completely dropped the ball. The reality is any good coach has to be a good communicator and know his players. Players will need different attention. To respond. Some need mentoring, some encouraging, and some loving kicking a butt. Yeah, but that's the problem. Intertap is coaches like Babcock and Mike Keenan and those historical guys that we know of. Just Scotty Bowman. Scotty Bowman didn't talk to the players. You don't talk to the players, right? You would talk to them as a group. You'd scream and yell at them between periods, and you'd give them a pep talk on the way out on the ice. But essentially, you spoke to them through messages, whether it's through another person, whether it's through their ice time, whether it's through whatever. That's the way it was back then. They didn't communicate. Now these players have meetings on a daily basis with the coaching staff. They're meeting, not every day maybe, but every couple days they're sitting down and they're talking about expectations. They're talking about their roles. They're talking about, this is what we expect from you. This is the role we want you to play on the team. What do you think about what you're doing? How do you think you're playing? Do you think you're playing well? This is what we think you're doing well. This is what we think you're not doing well. This is what we think you need to improve on. Those are the types of things, not like, oh my God, the coach thinks I'm doing bad because I got 2 minutes less ice time, in this game than I did in the last game. And, I only had 4 shifts in the third period. What does that mean? Does it mean that I'm playing badly, or does it just mean, well, maybe we had a couple penalties in that period and I just didn't get on the penalty kill? And, it's like, they're left guessing, and again, As grown-ups, we can sit here and we can say, we could maybe deal with that. But when you're 19, 20, 21 years old, you can't deal with that. Especially when, you're in a high stress situation where you're trying to live out your dream. You're trying to become a professional hockey player, and meanwhile you're dealing with mental warfare. What is my assessment on Reinbacher's development? I think it's great that he seems to be, his injury seems to be healing at a quicker rate than we thought. I thought his season last year was a positive. I think a lot of people view his season last year as a negative, in that his production went down. But I think the fact that he played on a really, really bad team in a really good league and was a leader on that team, even as an 18-year-old, he had a leadership role. He was he's definitely the best player, but he was a leader on that team last year that really, really struggled. Struggled. Not just like played badly, but like struggled as in like they lost players and they faced relegation and things like that. I think the fact that he faced that kind of adversity at such a young age in a leadership role, I think will pay dividends for him going forward as far as his maturity and his appreciation for the game and becoming a better hockey player. So I think his development's going great. I mean, obviously it remains to be seen what he becomes in the NHL if he makes that jump. But I'm happy about it. I'm all for it. What's up, Marco? Welcome. But yeah, you're Billy D and Intertap. You are right. Some players need a kick in the ass, and some players need a pat on the butt. And I agree with that, and that's always been the case. And even Marty St. Louis, will probably tell you that there's some guys on that team that need a kick in the ass, right? But again, this whole conversation came up in the context of Patrick Laine, right? And so today with him being benched in the third period, how is he going to respond to that? Because in the past, Patrick Laine has been a guy who's needed a pat on the butt, not a kick in the ass. And so, how will again? I'm confident that the Canadiens coaching staff will communicate well with him, and won't just leave him on the end of the bench and then not talk to him about it and leave him out in the cold to try and figure it out. And they ideally they won't allow it to snowball into something bigger where he falls into old habits or into old issues when it comes to mental health and so on and so forth. Hopefully this will be a scenario where they sit down with him afterwards and say, listen, we're not down on you. We appreciate everything you've brought here, but we've noticed tonight you didn't really have it, and so we thought we had to sit you down, and you weren't our best option. And we'd love for you to get back there, and we're whatever you need from us to help you get there. Those are the kinds of conversations you need to have, right? It's not about just leaving him there to stew on it and see if being pissed off will be enough to motivate him, because I think historically being pissed off is not a motivator for Patrick Laine. It's a demotivator. Reinbacher's showing in Laval at the end of last season was super encouraging. Yes, I agree, Marco. Absolutely. And again, that to me was sort of an indication that the year in Switzerland was not the debacle or the terrible thing that everybody made it out to be. Right. I think that year. I think historically we'll look back at that year, or he'll look back at that year anyway, as a positive, as somewhere where he learned a ton of lessons about dealing with adversity and playing through adversity and dealing with bad things, and that'll help him down the road. I was wondering if Laine may not be 100%, but I think Marty St. Louis would have addressed it differently in the presser if he was. I didn't see what he said in the presser. What did he say, Marco? I didn't. I was on the show here, so I didn't get a chance to see it yet. But again, I think the Canadiens are very committed to not allowing that scenario or Laine's mental health to fester, right? And I think that's the key is to talk about it. And so if they see him starting to to feel down or to not be, if they see a change in his mood or the way he is around the dressing room or the way he is around the team, I think that now that everything's out in the open about his mental health, and that he's been open about it, and obviously we all know that talking about it is the best solution. Um, I think they'll do that, right? They'll call him in to the office, and Marty will sit him down, or whoever will sit him down and say, "Hey, let's talk about this. Are you okay? What's going on with you? What can we do about it? How can we make it better? Like, what are you dealing with?" Right? As opposed to just being like, "Oh, fuck, there's Line A again," being a sook and being pouting and whatever. And like they're and we're gonna let him go. Like, he's off doing his own thing. He's playing video games, or he's doing whatever. Like, they're not going to do that, right? I didn't think he was helping the team. Yeah, that's fair, and I don't think he was. And I think there's a part of Line A that will respond to that, if it's communicated to him in the right way, right? I think I think yeah, and I think what I am relatively confident in, and we had a big chat before you joined the show here, Marco, about John Tortorella. What I'm really confident about with Martin St. Louis is that he doesn't say things in the press conference that he doesn't also say to the players directly, right? He doesn't sort of, like, John Tortorella would say something like that in the press conference and then never ever speak to the player. And he would expect the player to catch wind of what he said in the press conference and try and figure out what he meant by that. Whereas, Marty St. Louis, at some point, will sit down with Patrick Laine and say, "Yeah, I didn't feel like you were helping the team tonight. And that's why I left you on the bench. And I need more from you. And again, if there's anything stopping you from giving you more, let me know, and let me know what I can do to help you get there." As opposed to, you figure it out on your own. To me, coaching the other way is kind of lazy. You're kind of what's the right word? You're kind of failing's the wrong word, but what's the right word? You're not doing your job of teaching. You're preferring to say to the player, "You figure it out," as opposed to, "Let's figure it out together." Right? Like, that's what a teacher does, right? A teacher helps you figure it out. But by being, those old school style coaches, you're kind of saying, "You go figure it out. I'll send you these coded messages, and you go figure it out. And if you become good enough, you'll stay on the team. And if you don't, well, we'll bring somebody else in your place." And I think the problem with that is that you lose a lot of good players. A lot of good players fall by the wayside, because of that. Enter tap. Not a health issue with Laine. Key is he needs line mates that drive the play. And then he is most effective. Line mates tonight, not effective. Disagree, enter tap. I thought the Kirby Dach played well tonight. I don't think there was any issue with Kirby Dach's game. New Hook, perhaps not as much. But again, I don't think that Laine's line mates have been the issue for him. I don't. I honestly don't. I think that all three of those guys together have equal responsibility for the play of the second line. A big thing moving forward is figuring out who has the hockey IQ to make reads in the hybrid system. Your evaluation on who is and who may not have the aptitude to thrive in this system. Yeah. Is there anyone you're thinking of in particular, Marco? I mean, I think that over the last month and a half, I think we've seen that there's pretty much every guy in that team has the ability to play well in their system. I don't know that there's anybody who some of them took a little bit longer to get there, but at the end of the day, I think we've seen that every guy on the team right now has the ability to play in that system. Obviously, Jack I might have took a little bit longer than some of the others. And for whatever reason, right now, they don't seem to be playing the system as well for the last sort of 10 days or 2 weeks or so as they did for, the month between Christmas and the end of January, or sort of, the 3 weeks after Christmas, let's say. I think the defensive zone and the neutral zone system work has not been as good, but again, if you think of anyone in particular, I'm not sure who you mean. The lack of depth on this team is showing. The players are not set in their proper spots to succeed. Montreal has had role 4 lines to be effective. Yeah, I think that's probably right. But again, I don't think I think the lack of depth is less of a, it's a fact. It's more of a fact that there's not enough guys that are ready yet, as opposed to the team lacks depth. It's more like, the guys who would be coming up in behind these guys who have gotten injured are guys who are still in the minors and not quite ready to be at the NHL level just yet. Ultimately, coaching is about bringing the best of people. Yeah, you're right. 100%, Billy. It's about teaching and bringing the best out of people. And for whatever reason, in the NHL, it's been this tradition of, the best way of getting things out of people is by treating them like shit. And I think that's just been something that's been passed on from generation to generation. And I think finally we're kind of breaking out of that. Disagree on Doc, lost his man on 2 of the goals, also bad penalty. Okay, we'll agree to disagree on that, Marco. I thought that Doc had a decent game tonight. I don't think that anybody had a good game tonight, with the potential exception of Armia. But again, I don't think that Doc had a particularly bad game. I don't know. Again, I think you kind of look for Doc sometimes a little bit, but again, I don't know that any of the goals tonight could be attributed in any real meaningful way to Kirby Doc. Anyways, I don't agree with you on that. I mean, I think his underlying numbers were actually quite good tonight compared to the rest of the team. They kind of fell back down to earth. 65% expected goals for percentage. 3rd on the team, 63.5%. So, not too bad. Shots for 40%. So, yeah, I didn't see him play that badly tonight. Again, I don't know how bad of a penalty it was, but again, I have a hard time with the penalties in the NHL. I could go on for hours about the way penalties are called in the NHL. They're just so arbitrary now that I don't think it really has anything to do with discipline anymore when penalties are called. I think it has more to do with the scenario and the situation of the game and whether or not the referee decides that he's going to call that particular play on that particular instance. Patrick, what's going on? Newhook took most of the face-off, only 1 of 7. That line is basically always chasing the puck. Yeah, face-offs are an issue. Yeah, face-offs are definitely an issue with this team. I agree with you. I saw there was a face-off at one point on the power play where Patrick Laine took the face-off. He actually won it, but I found it kind of odd that he was taking the face-off. What's going on, gang? What's going on over here on TikTok? If you're over on TikTok, guys, come join us on YouTube. The instructions are on the screen behind me. The channel is Recliner Sports 4, Habs After Dark. We go live after every Canadiens game. We go live about 10, 15 minutes after the game's over. Come on and join us over here. If you are over here on YouTube, please subscribe. Hit the button down below. Hit the notification bell. Hit the thumbs up. We got 15 thumbs up. Not too bad. Traffic's been a little bit slow here tonight, given it's a Sunday early evening game, and the Canadiens played miserably, so I didn't expect to have a ton of people here. I'll go back and look at the goals he was on for. He also cross-checked a guy over and over and over who was already on the ice at the end of the period. Again, Marco, do you think I didn't watch the goals? I watched the goals multiple times. I don't think that Doc was in any real significant way responsible for any of the goals. He wouldn't have been the number one guy I would blame for any of the goals. I wouldn't have said he would have been the first or second guy I would have blamed for any of the goals. As far as the cross-check is concerned, yeah, it was a cross-checking. But again, were there a dozen other cross-checks in the game that were just as bad as that didn't get called tonight? Yes, there were. So again, players do that. Here's a fight: Will Cooley and who's 14 for Las Vegas. So yeah, again, I mean, Marco. I mean, I watch the goals. I mean, come on. I don't go on the show here and talk about the game without watching the goals multiple times. Kirby Dach was not responsible in any real way for any of those goals. Right, the first goal, Jake Evans, bad read, let his guy walk right in. The second goal, the third goal, I think it was. Killorn is allowed to skate in all the way from the red line all the way to the center dot. And Jack Guy, basically backs off him completely at the blue line and leaves him alone. It's just like, the second goal, David Savard, screws up a play at the blue line. He tries to make a play at the blue line, and he messes it up, and it allows the Anaheim player to go in, and so again, I don't see Kirby Dach being a major negative contributor on any of those goals, but again, he's the whipping boy, and everybody likes to pick on him. But I think he's been playing much better hockey of late. I still think there's a lot of work to be done on his game. He obviously isn't there. His defensive game needs work, but yeah, I know the goal you're talking about, Marco. I disagree with you. I don't think it's fair to blame him for that goal. I don't think it's fair to say that goal is can be put at his feet in any significant way. I know the goal you're talking about. I've watched it probably 8 or 10 times before the show started. I mean, here's how I describe the goal. Montreal is still reeling from the previous goal. David Savard, the Vetrano goal. David Savard makes a mistake at the blue line and allows Strome to enter the zone. Strome passed to Vetrano in the left circle. Vetrano shot beats Samuel Montembeault. Anyways, let's move on to the next topic, guys. Tap that screen, guys, if you're over there on TikTok. If you want to join the show, come on over and join us over here on YouTube. We're just on TikTok to let you know that we're doing a show on YouTube. The channel is Recliner Sports 4. The show is Habs After Dark. We go live every night after the Canadiens play. We go live here on YouTube, and you can come on over and join us on the show. If you're interested, if you're over here on YouTube, hit the subscribe button down below, hit the notification bell, and hit the thumbs up. Looks like we might be running out of... Oh my god, I keep doing the same thing, guys. Looks like we might be running out of gas a little bit here, guys. Maybe we'll shut her down here a little bit early. We've been on for about an hour and 40 minutes so far. But yeah, maybe we'll end the show there, guys. Canadiens lose 3-2 to the Anaheim Ducks. Not a great performance, guys. I think the Canadiens had a really tough game tonight. I think that the entire team probably doesn't have a whole lot to be proud of here tonight. The only guy I would really point to who might be able to hold his head up after tonight is Yoel Armia. The Canadiens lose 3-2 to the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks were not a good team tonight, but they did pull off the win. The Canadiens were even worse. Canadiens had presented to them an opportunity to win a game. To start this road trip on the right foot. They utterly dropped that opportunity. They failed in that opportunity, and they allowed Anaheim to pull off a victory that they probably didn't deserve. Anaheim is walking away with this win tonight thinking we did not we didn't have what it takes tonight, but we were able to pull off a win anyway. Again, it wasn't a goalie situation. Dostal did not stone the Canadiens in any way. Had nothing to do with that. This is a really, really terrible performance by the Canadiens. Probably their worst since before Christmas. Thank you, Entertap. I appreciate it. Tovaj, losing Gouli and Hyman has hurt. They did play better tonight, all things considered, just not good enough. Strong start, though. I don't think they played well tonight at all, Tovoj. The shorthanded goal. The first period was fine. First period was fine, but unfortunately, after that first period, they appeared to have fallen into the mindset that they had an easy game in front of them and that they could just coast their way to a victory, and that just wasn't going to be the case. That's not the case in the NHL. No games are easy. Patrick, there is an easy way to analyze goals in the NHL via the visualizer. No pictures of anybody, just great. Yeah, I watch them all the time. Patrick, I watch them off NHL.com. I watch the visualizer, and I watch the replays. I typically watch mostly the visualizer because, like you say, it's a nice way to see how the game and see how the play developed and finished off. So I appreciate everybody for coming. Marco, Patrick, Billy D, Tovaj, Entertap. Who else we got here? We got Billy D, Muck, Benoit, Isaiah was here for a bit. Frank, thank you. Isaiah had a good chat with Isaiah. Frank, Billy D. Olivier was here. Hunter Bethune came by and said hello. Thank you. James was here early. Steph Leblanc, merci beaucoup. Olivier, James, Muck, all the way to the beginning. Claudio was here. Thank you, Claudio. And RDP was here at the beginning of the show. Thank you guys all for coming. Again, like I said, if you are not yet subscribed, please help us out. Help us grow the channel. Help us grow the community. We're trying to give you guys a place to chat intelligently in a safe and civil environment after the games. Come on down. If you're not following, hit that subscribe button down below. If you're watching live, if you're watching in a replay, I do get that not everybody can watch the games or watch the show after the game. Sometimes you need to watch it later on, whether it's too late or, I mean, tonight's not too late, but, you know, some nights it is quite late. But I do appreciate you as well if you're watching in a replay. Thanks so much. That's awesome. We love you all, and we do think it's awesome that you're here. Thank you so much. Goals on PK, NPP, nothing at 5 versus 5. Yes, Patrick. So that's it for tonight, guys. Thank you so much. Games on Tuesday and Wednesday, both late starts. 10:30 starts for me, maybe even 11:30 starts for me, I think, actually. So I may or may not be on the air. If you want to check it out, go look and see if I've posted the show coming up. And but I'm going to do my best to go live. But again, it's hard for me to do the show when the games don't end until 1:30 in the morning my time, even later than that sometimes. So I'll do my best, but we'll see where we're at. But again, the Canadiens play on Tuesday against the San Jose Sharks, and then they play on Wednesday against the LA Kings, and then they play on Saturday afternoon against the Devils. Sunday afternoon they play as well, and I can't think off the top of my head who that is against. But in any event, that's it for tonight. I appreciate all of you. Canadiens lose 3-2 to the Anaheim Ducks. Not a fun game to watch, but I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I did appreciate all of you, and I did enjoy talking with you, and I hope you had fun. And we will see you in the next one. Peace out.